everybody, it's Old School Heart back with another video for you guys. So I know it's been about a week and a half that we've had our cultural conversation. So welcome back to the channel. I miss you. I hope you guys have had a great week. I hope it's been prosperous. I hope you are enjoying yourself and you are moving to another level of consciousness, of happiness, or whatever it is. So we have to talk about it. I know we have to talk about it, just like everybody's talking about it, about the Netflix movie When They See Us by Ava DuVernay. Now, I did say on my last video, the one that I did about Spike Lee, if you have not watched that, please go back and watch that. I did say on my last video that I was looking forward to this coming out, as well as She's Gotta Have It Too. I may do a review on She's Gotta Have It Too, but at this moment, I think it's kind of difficult for me to admit that I don't really like it. So it's going to take some unpacking before I can go there. But this cultural conversation is going to be about When They See Us, the Netflix movie by Ava DuVernay. So if you are not aware of the Central Park Five, this is a story dated back to 1989 involving five young boys convicted and served time for the raping and assault of a white woman in the Central Park area. These young men were all under the age of 16. I think Koree was the only one who was 16, but they were all under the age of 16. There was no evidence that linked them to the rape or the assault of the woman. Yet the New York police coerced these young men to come up with some type of story linking them to the rape of this woman. All of the stories did not mesh well with each other. They didn't make any sense. But the district attorney, state prosecutor at the time, really pushed for these young men to not only be accused, but to actually serve time. So Ava DuVernay turned this into a really gut-wrenching movie that you all must watch. But for me, I knew about the Central Park Five a long time ago because I'm a huge fan of documentaries, and I came across this documentary about 10 years ago. I'm a big fan of Ken Burns. If you have not checked out any of Ken Burns' documentary work, I don't know what you guys are waiting on. This man does the most awesome documentaries that I have ever watched, ever. Some of my favorites from him are is the Jack Johnson documentary that he did. I love the Jackie Robinson piece that he did. I also really loved the piece on jazz that he did. I mean, he's done quite a few, but he and his daughter actually brought the Central Park Five story back to life. These young men had already served their time. They were out of jail, and then they were moving on to asking for compensation for pain, suffering, and for serving time on a crime they did not commit from a New York police. And so this story has been around quite a bit. The documentary was quite amazing. I met Yusef, I met Antoine, I met Koree quite a while ago from looking at that documentary. And even then, it was one of those documentaries that made you go, man, this is the most bogus shit I've ever heard in my life. This is just unbearable. And Yusef, for some reason, I never heard the name Yusef before watching the documentary. So his name was a name that I most definitely just was intrigued by. And I never lost their names in my memory. It's something that is just ingrained there. And so when I heard that Ava was doing the movie on it, I was excited. But now the excitement of finally seeing this documentary has turned into more so a place of anger and frustration and a whole bunch of other things. And so I will admit, guys, I thought I was just going to see another piece on what I already knew. I did not know that it was going to take me to another place, and take me to a place that I thought I had already resolved, right? This movie picks at your heartstring. This movie makes you angry. This movie makes you frustrated. This movie pisses you off. It does all the above. And I think that I had to also remember that even though this is something that I know a lot about, that I really pay attention to, that I also have to remember that I need to show a lot more grace to the people who don't know about this story. And I'm not, if you were born in the 90s, of course, you're not going to remember this. And this is going to be your first time hearing this story and seeing a story like this come up. But for me, you know, I've heard this story before. And so I have to remember to have grace for the people who it may have passed. They didn't hear it, or they're not informed. And so I have to remember not to be arrogant and not to be an asshole and not to be know-it-all. And this reminded me to most definitely remember that there are some things that I don't know about other cases and other things that's going on, and I'm going to need that same grace. So I was a bit frustrated at first at the outrage and the stalking of the state prosecutor, because we're talking about something that happened a long time ago. 1989 babies are almost 30 years old. And so, oh no, they are 30 years old. They'll be 30 years old this year. Most people that were born in 1989 are already 30 or will be 30. And so, this is, you know, we're bringing up old things, but we're having new feelings and new emotions that arise because of it. And so just some things that I found to be quite well, that struck a nerve for me was, or that I found to be very important in this, was we have to talk about the economics in this. If you notice, all of the families struggled with supporting their child as they were locked up in different prisons. And, you know, a lot of people will brush past that looking at a lot of the other things that happened. But that was one of the things that I had to remember, is that, you know, wealth has been robbed from us. And being able to be equal financially has been robbed from us. And that is why prisons work so well, because you put a poor person there with family who is also poor, and it's sad, it's ridiculous, and it's ashamed, you know, that a lot of those parents really couldn't even send commissary, and how expensive it was to talk on the phone. And we all know, if you don't have human connection, if you're not connected with the people that you love the most, and you're not able to communicate with them, and they're not able to travel every week to see you, it can become super, super hard for you. And it can become hard to remain positive and to remain focused, even when you didn't do anything wrong. And that's how a lot of inmates just take the convictions that they have. But it's just amazing that all of these young men never took the plea deals, never decided to just say, hey, just to get out, let me do this. That whatever that they could, you know, their families were able to support and assist them. But, you know, it really is sad when, you know, you have a family member that's locked up and you're not really able to support them, because you ain't really able to support your damn self outside of there. It's a little bit more affordable now in prisons to talk on the phone, but it's still quite expensive. It still is adding about $100 to $200 to $300 a month to make that person comfortable while they're in there. And I would know that because I was a social worker at Cook County Department of Corrections for a little time. And so I know firsthand dealing with different family members, how hard it is to come up with this extra coin that you don't really have. You have enough to pay your bills, you have enough to take care of everybody, but you don't have enough for these extra expenses. And so that was one part that caught my attention quite a bit. Another part that caught my attention was the relationship between Antoine and his father. And it was heartbreaking to see this. It was so heartbreaking to see this. But we have to think back on this also. It's almost like slavery. What slavery did to some black men, what slavery did to some black mothers and fathers who really didn't have any control of their children and really had to just watch as their child was either taken off to another plantation. If it was a daughter, that daughter being raped by the master. If it was a son, the son being beat, skin ripped off of him. And I assume that's how Antoine's father felt, like this powerless human being. Like, I just want my son around, so I'm gonna do what I can, I'm gonna say what I can, so that we can just go home and this can all just like blow over. And not only that, like, a lot of black men stayed away from politics, stayed away from jail, stayed away from crime, period. So they don't know the process of what it's like to be in the room, being interrogated and, you know, making sure that you watch what you say and you watch what you do. That's all a new experience. And so Antoine's father literally, I felt bad for Antoine's father. I felt bad for Antoine too, because the relationship, because of this, was terribly flawed and terribly messed up because of it, you know. But you know, it's really super hard to see your child go through this and be powerless, and to know that as a young black man, and I believe Antoine's father knew this, as a young black man, there's no winning. You know, there's no winning. And we see what happened. You know, all of those black kids and one Hispanic kid, all of them were taken off with no evidence, no semen linked to them, no DNA linked to them. They didn't even have their stories correct, and still something like this happened. And it kind of reminded me of, I don't know if you guys read a lot of books by Toni Morrison, but Beloved was a book that I read. And there was a character by Seth's husband. I believe his name was Hallie in the story, but Hallie watched Setha in the story that Toni Morrison told get raped, and her tits, they were pulling milk out of her breast and drinking it from her. And he caught his masters and their sons doing this to his wife, and it gave him a mental breakdown. I hate saying nervous breakdown because there's no such thing as a nervous breakdown, but it caused post-traumatic stress, and it caused him to have this mental illness that he could not get out of. And that was the same thing with Antoine's father. It caused a sickness in him. I guarantee you that kidney issue, the dialysis, and all of that happened because he had no control over the situation. Not any control of this over the situation at all. Another part that I want to bring up, and then I'm going to end this video because I don't want to make it super, super long, but this is one of those things where you can't even really not talk about it a lot. But one of the things that I heard the sister tell Kevin was to find him something to look forward to. I'm sorry I had to read that, but Kevin's sister told him something that is so important that I think a lot of people that are incarcerated and are incorrectly, and I don't want to use incorrectly, but people who didn't do the crime, did not commit the crime, but to find something to look forward to. Now, I worked at Cook County Department of Corrections. It's so important to remind Black boys to be passionate about something and to find their purpose. Because if something like this arises, this can be used to not break your spirit. And I've seen a lot of young men come in and out of the Cook County jail and really not grow in any way, not be focused, but really angry and bitter and very, very hard to work with. Very, very hard to work with. And that's because, you know, they haven't figured that out yet. And so when they get to a place where they're just sitting for 24 hours, they can get really complacent and they can really get into a state of depression that causes them to just stall and do nothing. That means to not read a book. I mean, just to really just sit there, just watch TV all day, and call people and just ask them consistently what they're doing. So you have to remind young men, and we must remind young men to find purpose, and to stay on that lane and to find something to look forward to. And so I thought that that was really good that Kevin's sister said, and that really kind of choked me up on the story. Now, I will say this. I did not finish episode 4 because Koree Story was so difficult for me. I am in mental health and intellectual disabilities. I've always been in that, along with this radio TV stuff that I have. We all know that there is a little bit of cognitively delayedness in Koree. And how he was manipulated, how he was abused, how he got outlast of everyone. And I knew this prior already. So looking at episode 4 was extremely difficult because that shit hurt. It sucked. It hurt. It was just awful. And it was so hard for me just hearing that his brother, who was a trans person, died and he wasn't able to be there for that. Him having nothing to do with the fucking case at all. None of these boys did. But him especially just going down to the precinct and he was the last one out was super frustrating to watch. And we have to remind ourselves that we have to pay special and close attention to Black boys, especially that are cognitively delayed, that have mental retardation or any form of mental illness as it relates to being in the prison system, because really awful things can happen there and there is no advocacy. If you're not a parent and you're not checking up on them every day, making sure caseworkers and social workers are doing what they're supposed to do, they can do whatever they want to those children. And that is sad and it is disappointing. Or adults, because they send Koree to an adult jail. Also, you know, just looking at when you are stigmatized as a convicted felon, you aren't allowed to do anything. And for me, this just reminded me that, you know, even if you did not do anything and you're fighting to get that conviction off of you, while that conviction is on you, you are not going to get a job. You're not going to get a job, especially if you're a sexual, if it's anything sexual. And I had a whole pod of protective custody, and a lot of people who are accused of sexual molestation or rape usually put themselves in protective custody for their own sake. But, you know, I had to help an inmate try to navigate through where he was going to live when he got out. And it's extremely hard, guys. Like, number one, you have to find a place before you can even leave. You have to have it all together. You literally have to have it all together. And so, I know for those boys with that conviction, shit had to be hard as hell. And this is just a reminder to me that, you know, just because a person is convicted doesn't mean that they did the crime. Just because they took the plea deal doesn't mean that they did the crime. Some people just do that to get the hell up on out of the prison. And if you've ever worked in prison or been in prison, you know exactly how it feels. The shit is not fun at all. I have so many stories that I could tell you, but we don't have time for that, so I may do a story on it a little bit later. Last but not least, I know that there is a lot of people who have started to petition to mess with the state prosecutor at the time and the district attorney, I believe. They pretty much got her off of Instagram. I think she's off Facebook and Twitter. I think she's had to resign this week. I love that as Black people, when we're passionate about something, we do what's necessary for those people to not ever live again. They are canceled as far as we are concerned. But I want our energy to go to people who it's happening to now, because they received $41 million of restitution. I know that's not enough. It will never make up for what has happened to Yusef, to Antoine, to the other men. It's not enough. I know it's not enough. But their case has been looked at. They've received restitution. They've received this movie. But there are people that are just like them that are in the court system now that are fighting their fourth appeal to the court, their fifth appeal to the court. Two that I want to bring your attention to is one is out there in Alabama by the name of Curtis Flowers. He's in jail right now. He's either in Alabama or Mississippi. I always get those two mixed up. But he is convicted of killing 4 white people in a furniture store. And the only thing that they have against this man is they know that the assailant had feli shoes. They found feli shoes in Curtis Flowers' home that didn't even belong to him. But they found feli shoes in Curtis Flowers' home. And Curtis Flowers was let go of this job, this furniture job, where the 4 people were killed. Now, mind you, Curtis Flowers didn't even work there long, so I don't know why they feel like Curtis has a vendetta, but he was nowhere near the case. Everybody keeps saying that, but he is one where he is on his sixth appeal. Nobody has went this far. And it has been overturned a couple of times. The man has not been out of jail yet. He's been there for almost 20 years, I believe now. And it's still the same. That's sad, guys. He's just like the Central Park 5. There's no evidence against this man except for these damn shoes. So let's point our attention there. And then another person is Keith Davis out of Baltimore, out of the city of Baltimore. And that's a sad ass case too. He was actually shot at by police. They thought that he was a part of a robbery. The person that was robbed said that he was not the person that robbed him. He just so happened, they were running after the assailant, and he just so happened to be running to get out of the way, and they thought that he was a person. And so he is charged with robbery and trying to harm police officers, and these sentences are both life sentences, guys. And so let's point our energy to the people that need it now, not the people that we've already helped. I know that people get really passionate about stuff like this, and they've done quite a lot for the Central Park 5 in the last week after watching this movie. But we have people just like them that need to be out. And so if we could just spend a little bit of time trying to do what we can. If you need their names again, it is Curtis Flowers in Baltimore. Curtis Flowers case out in Alabama. And then we also have Keith Davis's case in Baltimore that is going back for another retrial, even though there's no evidence on either of these people. It's quite fucking frustrating. So, guys, I just want us to put our energy to where we should put our energy at. But I want to thank you guys for watching this video. Please hit the like button. Please share this video as well. For a cultural conversation, I just want to hear your thoughts about what you thought about this case. Did you know about the case before the movie? How did you like? Do you think it's like our roots of today? Because somebody had said that, and I was like, it may be. It just may be. I would put 12 hours of a slave up there with the comparison as well, because that shit, I usually can take any slavery movie, but that was a little too much for me. But I don't know, this may be, but I just want to hear your thoughts. I want to thank you guys for watching once again, and I'll be back with another video probably tomorrow or 2 days from now. So look out for that. And thank you for tuning in. This is Old School Heart. Have a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.